Hello there and welcome. My name is Tyler Best, and I am one of the Springboard community managers. Today's webinar, Working in the Digital Age, Using Social Media as an SBC Approach, is presented by Springboard, an online community under the Breakthrough Action Project. Breakthrough Action is USAID's flagship program on social and behavior change. Breakthrough Action ignites collective action and encourages people to adopt healthier behaviors by forging, testing, and scaling up new and hybrid approaches to SBC. If this is your first Springboard webinar, then welcome. So what is Springboard? Springboard is an online community of nearly 4,000 SBC professionals from over 100 countries. Springboard can help you advance your SBC skills, connect with colleagues and SBC leaders, and get inspired through resources, events, and jobs. If you're not a member already, join today. We'll be starting today's event with 4 presentations, followed by time for questions and answers at the end. Feel free to use the chat feature on the bottom to introduce yourself and your organization. Additionally, you may use this feature to ask questions throughout the event for the speakers at any time. We'll compile those during the event to use during the Q&A session. Now on to the show. Our first speaker is Bolade Oladejo and comes to us from Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs, where he's a senior program officer under the Breakthrough Action Nigeria project. Over to you, Bolade.
Thank you very much, Tyler, for the warm introduction. Hello, everyone. It is nice to be here at such a time to talk about something as powerful as social media, which is very powerful in our world today. So I will be setting the stage for some of the great examples of how social media has been used in different contexts and how we might better deploy this tool for social and behavior change. You will agree with me that the common factor between social media and social and behavior change is the word social itself, which could as well mean society or organization. So what I will be talking about will dwell on this intersection between social media and social and behavior change. I will not bore us with what social media is or what social and behavior change is, as we are all professionals, possibly in both fields, either as an implementer on the SBC side or a user on the social media side. So let's get to it, Tyler. Next slide. So as I said, this session of mine would focus on, one, bringing us up to date on the current social media landscape to paint the picture of the power that social media wields in our current environment. Share some ideas, which are not exhaustive, by the way, on how we might leverage this social media power for SBC interventions. I would also try to outline key steps necessary, but also not exhaustive in deploying a good social media strategy for SBC. And lastly, highlight key metrics to look out for adaptive management of approaches. Next slide, Tyler. Okay, so because I like stories, I would like to share one of the power of social media with us, one that I found very useful for this session. The picture on your screen is the picture of a young father. He showed this picture on Instagram of him changing his kid's diaper while holding him on his lap due to the absence of a changing table in men's restroom. And this happened in September 2018. Now, this story shows the power that social media has to spur action and promote certain behaviors if it can be socialized as an acceptable act. Ordinary posting of this picture by this man inspired Pampers to install 5,000 diaper changing tables in men's bathrooms across the US. So a single post spurred the action of an organization that was present on that particular social media. So I only wanted to use this to demonstrate how powerful social media can be if well deployed. Let's further put this into context by looking at the current statistics around social media as of July 2021. That's this year. That's a few months ago. Next slide, Tyler. Okay. So according to Hootsuite, as of July 2021, we currently have over half of the world population actively using social media. And this is not a downward trend. Neither has this trend plateaued. So we still expect more upside. In essence, about 4.48 billion people were using social media as of July 2021. It is important to note that this includes low internet penetration communities as well. As such, we usually have this thinking around social media not being able to reach certain communities. But I think this is fast correcting this misconception. In the last 1 year alone, social media users have increased by about 13%, and a whopping 99% of users access social media via mobile phones, spending nothing less than 2 hours daily on the various social media networks. That alone is an opportunity that SBC could harvest because we need people's attention and we are seeing that it's concentrated somewhere. Next slide, Tyler. Okay, to further illustrate how people currently access information, it has become evident that the source of news for majority of the world's population is online media, including social media. One key factor that I want to illustrate on this slide is the fact that this finding does not show any huge disparity by sex. If you look at how they access news, you see that the difference between female and male is not so significant across board, except maybe print media that has about 5%, but that's still relatively insignificant considering what we're looking at and the power that social media wields as well. However, print media is also not the main cause of concern here because we already use that very well in our SBC interventions. But across board on social media, that's online media and messengers, you could see that the percentages are not so far away from each other. And 82% of people access news or information through online media, including social media. That's really huge. I wanted to look at location as a statistic, but I could not find one that drills down to specifics in terms of rural or urban or by percentage of internet penetration. But I think this will suffice for the purpose of this webinar. Next slide, Tyler. So just a quick snapshot of where you can find the most people on social media by platforms. Facebook has remained the most popular with almost 3 billion active users worldwide. When we are designing SBC interventions on social media, we would need further research into the types of audience on each platform to inform where to focus our energy. But this illustrates where you can find most people per time on social media. Next slide, Tyler. So, as I said, we're going to be looking at some of the leverages we can use the power of social media for in SBC. As SBC experts, we know that social behavior change interventions are most effective when specific audiences are engaged at multiple levels of the socio-ecological model. At the individual level, social media provides an opportunity to reach specific audience through targeted messaging. For example, a campaign that seeks to reach adolescents on family planning will be able to target their messages to adolescents within a specific geographic area. The same platforms can also be used to engage the influencers of these adolescents, since we know that reaching them alone does not suffice. And this also helps us to socialize this behavior for them and increases the possibility of behavior change. So if they see something happening and it's become like a social norm within their communities, even though we started from online and it has translated to their physical environment, it becomes easier for them to be able to practice those behaviors. And compared to traditional media or community mobilization, this is relatively cost effective and less time consuming, considering other activities such as advocacies, media buy-in, which will take months of preparation when we are trying to deploy SBC interventions. Next slide, Tyler. Another way that we can also leverage social media for SBC, I borrowed this slide from Mala Shaivitz, who is the CCP Director of Digital Strategy, as it's really a powerful tool. Social listening, especially in this era of COVID, where rumor management is very important. There are tools that we can use as SBC practitioners to track and follow a particular topic, such that we can understand what the perceptions, beliefs, attitudes around the topic within our audience or community of interest are. Usually this can be done by some third-party applications or use of analytics to track such topics. Aggregating data across multiple platforms can increase the effectiveness of our SBC strategies. For example, in the planning of an SBC campaign, identification of influencers around a specific topic is usually important. And social listening can easily help to fish out these influencers across different platforms. You will definitely see that there are platforms that when you go to, and actually, let's bring this home by stating an obvious example. I can wake up and post something on social media, for example, very touching topic. I woke up this morning, I saw something that happened on the road, passionately post that on Twitter or Facebook, and you get like 2 likes, 1 comment. But somebody can say something not even half as important as yours, but you see that they have like 1,000 likes, 2,000 comments, more engagements that we do. It's easier to fish out these people around the different topics that we want to talk about on social media. Such information is more than powerful to inform our program design. If we know these people that can be advocates or propagate these messages even more than our own accounts or profiles, such that we are communicating with specific understanding of our primary and secondary audiences in mind. This is quite useful for rumor management, especially in this current era of COVID. You would want to make sure that you reach people based on the fact that you understand what they are looking for, or what their misconceptions are, what their prejudices are, or what their perceptions of a particular topic is. They would then will be able to design our messages to speak to those particular misconceptions, rumors, and be able to get them to the place where we really want them to be. So that's another leverage of social media for SBC. Next slide, Tyler. I see Gunter already put something up on two-way communication and ensuring a feedback loop. I hope this slide would try and do a little bit of justice to that, but we can still revisit that question later on. As much as SBC encapsulates effective communication, social media helps it further along this path by providing a constant opportunity for feedback from the people we are trying to change their behavior. The 24-hour nature of social media makes active listening possible throughout any campaign. So social media is like you being there for the people you're trying to reach 24 hours of the day. Unlike community mobilization, for example, or social mobilization within certain communities, you gather people around, you give them the messages, and then you leave. But social media makes you present all the time. And more than just having a conversation per time, it also makes them get answers to their questions on the go, which they might not have thought of as at the time of deploying an intervention physically with them. So this also helps to facilitate uptake of behavior, since we know that people are at different levels of behavior uptake. And it might be that question at that particular time that would get them to where they need to be. Based on the feedback that you also get online from people, there is also the possibility of adaptive management of our approaches. And it's easier for us to do this through social media because it increases the effectiveness of our intervention. You can do this on the fly. Next slide, Tyler. Also, communication for emergency. I've mentioned the era we are in, and I cannot overstretch that. We all know that 2020 may marked a ton of events in our life, especially our social lives. So, in such a emergency situation, just imagine for once that we did not have such mechanism to reach a large number of people across countries in different time zones all at the same time. We might have more than the disaster that we think we currently have on our hands, because it helped us to quickly reach people. It not only provided us an opportunity for quick dissemination of information, but also helped to maintain an open line of communication with the public in this situation. And this is one of the leverages for social media for SBC. Provides quick and important communication, maintain an open line of communication, and promotes preventive behaviors through socialization. Because even after we have been able to disseminate the information, we are also able to put out messages that shows that preventive behaviors towards COVID-19, for example, is a social thing, and people are embracing it because it's becoming like something that everybody should do to become part of a great community. And that's also socialize behaviors that you want to change. Next slide, Tyler. All right, so how do we deploy social media for SBC? Just like every approach, there are a few steps to take, but they are also not exhaustive, as I said earlier, depending on what we want to achieve. The first one is audience research. This involves more than just knowing what the audience needs, but also what do they want? Because most social media platforms prioritize their users' experience. They use algorithms to determine what content users see. The ones that matches the user's interests based on previous engagements are most likely what they will present to them. So we must post quality content that speaks the language that our target audience wants. And there is also the place of promotion. Social media may be cheap, but it also requires financial investment, unlike the general thought that we usually have that it is free and should require no financial resources. As with any intervention, you will also need a solid strategy that covers things like the tone that the campaign would adopt based on audience research that you've done and organizational values. That's you as an organization now. It will consist of crisis management, of course, because social media is fast and quick, and there might be a backlash from something you least expect it from. So you should have a crisis management approach in place. You also need to have a campaign goal and objective. This is beyond saying, what exactly do you want to achieve through this social media engagement? And of course, it goes without saying that you need an engagement plan. You need to also have your channel mix. Just like we said, there is a type of research you have to do to know where your type of audience are based on the kind of messaging that you want to give. So that being said, content is also king. As I said, you need to serve them what they're looking for, even if it's to just weave your own message into that. And I feel like this is one of the ways that we have not really been able to put our foot down as SBC practitioners. Most of the time we put out our messages verbatim, the way we think the audience should have it on social media. Whereas attention span is short. And if people don't see what they want, they scroll up as quickly as they can until they get to something that interests them. So how can we capture that interest and keep it? Content is the only way to achieve that. Also, monitoring is essential to being able to adapt, as things can quickly change on social media, as I said, and it helps to know the feelers of the people we're trying to reach and quickly adapting to what is currently piquing their interests. Next slide, Tyler. So, depending on your intervention, you will determine what success looks like. For a documentary on malaria, for example, that you're trying to disseminate on social media, views would be very important to you. So how many people saw the content? And the reach of that is also very important. Regardless of whether they did see the content, how many people have possibly been reached through this content. So views represent how many people saw your content. Clicks, how many people clicked that content, for example, if you had something clickable. Then comments, how many people typed a response to that content? How many people engaged with your content rather than just see and pass or see and scroll? How many people felt so passionate about your content to the extent that they want to share it within their own social circle? How many people shared that content to their own community? I feel this is a very powerful one, because for somebody to feel very engaged with your content and share it within their own circle, it means they are endorsing that particular content and they are trying to propagate it to their own community as well. So for the purpose of this webinar, we'll focus on just these few metrics. It's not as if this is exhaustive. There are other metrics that you can look out for depending on the kind of content or the kind of campaign that you have. Next slide, Tyler. And yes, there's also a thank you slide to say thank you for listening. And I hope this has been able to set up the tone for the next presentations that you will be listening to, which are going to be providing great examples on how some of these can be practicalized. Thank you very much. Over to you, Tyler.
Thank you, Bolade. I think that was an excellent setup for the rest of the presentations. So our second speaker is Erin Portillo. Erin is a senior program officer at the Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs, where she works on the Breakthrough Action Project. Over to you, Erin.
Thank you so much, Tyler. And yes, I could not have asked for a better framing presentation than the one that was just delivered. So thank you so much, Bolade. So I'll be speaking about a campaign called Merci Monero, and how we solicit empathy online to shift youth family planning and reproductive social norms in real life, IR. Slide, please. As Tyler mentioned, my name is Erin Portillo. I'm a senior program officer working with Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs on the Breakthrough Action Project. And also, I spend a lot of my time on the West Africa Breakthrough Action Project, which focuses on family planning in 4 West African countries, which you'll see on my next slide. Slide, please. Great, thank you. So in Francophone Africa, like many places, some cultural norms and taboos often prevent open communication about youth reproductive health and family planning, and this limits access to crucial information and services for young people. So Merci Monero set out to try and address this. It's a multimedia campaign, meaning we operate on multiple channels, including social media, but also through TV and radio and community activities. The meat of the campaign, we really leverage testimonial videos to showcase the power of empathy to improve reproductive health and family planning access for youth in Francophone Africa, with the overarching goal of reducing the impact of certain social norms that do prevent young people from having access to these important pieces of information and services. The campaign to date has been disseminated in 9 countries overall, in particular in the 4 intervention countries that you see on the slide: Côte d'Ivoire, Niger, Togo, and Burkina Faso. And here you can see a screenshot of one of our videos, which has, which features Yusufu, which is the young man, and his uncle, who are telling their story of how Monsieur Boubacar, excuse me, helped Yusufu during a sensitive time in his life when he was going to school. And his uncle here says, if you do not exchange with your children about reproductive health and family planning, then you cannot help them. Slide, please. So here I do not expect anybody to be able to read the fine print and small fonts, but this is our theory of change for the campaign. And so you can see, as the socio-ecological model was mentioned in the first presentation, here we're hoping to have impact at a number of different levels. You can see the individual level highlighted in blue, the family and social level highlighted in pink, and then also the structural or addressing some environmental constraints, particularly among healthcare providers, highlighted in gray there. Slide, please. Specifically, we're hoping that everyday people will be able to see themselves and be celebrated as heroes that can support young people by listening to them and talking with them about reproductive health and family planning, and also supporting their access to reproductive health and family planning information and services. And so here we have representatives from a number of reference groups who are highlighted as heroes in the campaign. We have a sheikh from Niger, an adult woman who describes her experience and thanks her teacher actually for having been her hero and helping to discuss family planning benefits with her when she was a younger woman. We have a provider from Guinea, and then on the bottom of the screen we have Claire and Essay, who are neighbors. And when Claire did not have the support, when the young woman did not have the support of her family necessarily after an unplanned pregnancy, she was more at ease discussing and navigating the situation with her neighbors. So again, everyday people really stepping up to be there and support young people so they can make informed choices that are right for their lives in reproductive health and family planning. Slide, please. Another audience for the campaign is our young people themselves. We hope to positively impact youth attitudes and self-efficacy around informed and voluntary family planning choice and use. And so here we have some of the young people featured in the campaign. We have Gracien, whose mother was there for him and helped make sure that he would be a good partner for his eventual wife. We have Martial, who after a pregnancy with her partner, he supported and helped her to re-enroll in school, to adopt an FP method, and he listened to what she said she needed as well and supported her in those decisions. On the bottom, we have Fanta, who is discussing how a teacher stepped in after a difficult experience and a confusing experience after her first period. And then we have Abu from Guinea, who tells about how he found support after an unplanned pregnancy with his girlfriend as well. And so really just normalizing as well these conversations for young people, and also sharing the experiences of young people with adults and partners in young people's lives to, again, really foster that communication and have an impact of overcoming these taboos that put young people in very difficult situations. Slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're a multi-channel campaign. I'll focus on that first column. So we are present on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And the content that we post online on those social media pages include quizzes and quotes and discussion questions. We also of course disseminate the testimonial videos that I discussed online as well, and have some discussion around those videos. We also host Facebook Lives, which touches again on that question of two-way exchange. And we've also done tweet ups and live streamed events such as mini concerts. And then we also promote the events that are taking place related to the campaign that are taking place through our other channels. So we promote our community events, share the outcomes of our community events, promote mass media events, etc. Slide, please. So this gives you a snapshot of our campaign reach to date. We've been active since November of 2019 is when we first launched online. Our community activities have evolved. I can discuss those if of interest later, and how they complement our social media approaches. But you can see that Facebook is by far our most popular channel, which also relates back to what Bolade shared when giving that overview of where people are when they are online and finding their information. Twitter is actually our second most active channel, but it doesn't really compare quite as much to our presence on Facebook. Slide, please. We also saw in the first presentation a message or a reference to influencers, and this, I think, that operates in two realms. So where previously I discussed how Merci Monero really tries to pull in reference groups and those who are influencing the norms and the taboos and have the opportunity to help change some of and overcome some of these taboos at the community and interpersonal level. We also have online influencers. And so specifically in Togo, this is where we've been the most active with working with influencers. So there we worked with a specific comedian and 2 TV and radio hosts, each of whom were selected not only based on the size of their audience or their reach, but also on their reputation and their how well their messages and their brand aligns with the overarching goals of the campaign. Working with these influencers, again, we worked across our different channels. So on TV, through TV shows and appearances, they've also done social media promotion for us, recorded videos for us, which we in turn share on our pages. They've hosted Facebook Lives on their own pages related to the campaign and recorded personal messages and videos as well. Slide, please. As far as the results that we've had to date, we've conducted one exposure survey in 3 districts in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan, and we'll be replicating something similar in Niger, which will be a very interesting and very different context. In Côte d'Ivoire, we found that of those who recognized the campaign and who acknowledged having been exposed to the campaign, social media was the second most popular and likely channel through which our audiences had heard of the campaign. Exposure to the campaign was associated with a use of family planning methods, use of family planning services, and speaking to another person about reproductive health or family planning. And we use that last piece as a proxy for intergenerational communication, which of course takes us back to our 2 main audiences, young people and adults, and really opening the lines of conversation and empathy around reproductive health and family planning. Slide, please. Regarding our message, our lessons learned, certainly manage adaptively. A huge plus, as long as you're equipped to deal with it, is you are getting an influx of information from your audiences about your content all of the time. So you can not only analyze or have a look at the metrics that Facebook provides to you as far as when is best to post during the day, what kind of content is performing the best, etc. But also there are other methods that you can employ as well to evaluate the impact or the resonance of your campaign with your intended audiences. We worked with Breakthrough Research in the first year or so of the campaign to conduct certain social listening and monitoring activities. And the findings of those activities helped us shorten our videos to increase the likelihood that our viewers would view them to completion. We also, through those social listening reports, were able to identify specific themes that were gaining particular traction and which we could pursue from different angles and in more depth. It helped us adapt our marketing techniques by looking at which audiences we weren't necessarily reaching and which ones we were, and then messaging as well to the audience that was there. So for example, we were finding that though traditionally a lot of reproductive health and family planning campaigns are geared toward young women, we found we actually had a lot of I think at one point, 3/4 of our Facebook audience was male. And so while changing our marketing to try and reach out additionally and engage more with female audiences, we also changed tack a little bit and made sure to take advantage of the audience that we did have with us and that was following us. So adapting our messages to include more around the themes that might be interesting to and resonate and be important for our male audience members, including consent, including, talking about family planning in a couple as partners, etc. We also, another lesson learned is certainly using complementary channels according to the level of impact you want. So social media is one channel for us. Overall, we're hoping to overcome social norms and see a change at the community and social and interpersonal level. And so certainly we have an emphasis on our community presence, which then we amplify and complement with our online material. Live events are some of our most popular content on our social media pages. This allows us not only to reinforce the monthly themes, we organize all of our social media content according to a monthly theme, but also to address other audience interests that don't necessarily play in directly to the theme that we're addressing. So this might be appealing to and drawing more people in through invited guests. So we've hosted actors from Côte d'Ivoire, and parents and children themselves have appeared on the show, providers, midwives, doctors, etc., have appeared on the show as well, on the Facebook Live events, excuse me. This also allows for that back and forth exchange between our audiences and our invited guests. So we're able to, again, reinforce themes, but also provide information and address information that doesn't necessarily play into the core goals of the campaign. For example, our core goal is not to push out incorrect information or not to push out information about family planning, but Facebook Lives and some of our other content allows us to provide correct and reliable information about family planning methods. Finally, all social media platforms are not the same. You can see, if you'll recall the earlier slide, we have a much larger presence on Facebook than we do on our other channels. And for that reason, we put the most energy into tailoring our content for the time being into Facebook, while also trying different attempts to increase our presence on Twitter. So for example, a tweet up that we organized, I think it was back in May, performed very well. And we did see a spike in engagement there. So making sure that you're able to adapt and be flexible according to the channels that are most successfully reaching your audience or have the potential to do so. Thank you so much. Back to you, Tyler.
Thank you, Erin, very much. So our third speaker is Anurag Banerjee. Anurag is the CEO of Quilt.AI. Over to you, Anurag.
Thank you, Tyler. And I love this setup. So appreciate that. Appreciate everyone taking the time to be on this. Erin, thank you for talking about empathy, which happens to be Quilt.AI's tagline about empathy at scale. So Tyler, next slide, please, and we'll jump into it. So this is not new news to anybody. Quilt.AI is a for-profit entity, but we do 50% of our time and effort goes into specific issues around gender, climate, health, and a little bit on education. And we believe that behavior change at both the individual and the policymaker level is what's going to make a ton of difference overall. And social media, of course, as Bolade beautifully articulated, is the best way of scaling this. Slide, please. So I'm going to go to the next 3 slides really quickly, but it echoes what Bolade said. We turn to the internet. There's just so much data and footprints that all of us are putting out. It becomes a really useful way for us to understand and then sway human behavior. Slide, please. Slide, please. This is just a bit of an introduction about us and the spaces we work with. Some of these organizations I think everybody knows here. So slide, please. Okay, there are four things that we like to do using the internet and social media. One is we find that huge amounts of research is actually very feasible with digital data. I'm sure there's bias issues, and sure there's representation issues, and sure there's access issues, but that, as Bolade outlined and as Erin showed in her deck, is a thing that's going to soon become a thing of the past. So those organizations that seek to jump onto the internet faster will end up understanding human behavior better on that. The internet's also an amazing tool for driving behavior change. A large part, the comment that I always make is no man is born a misogynist. He becomes one based on the influences that he has in his life. And the biggest influence that happens today is these things, our phones and the filter bubbles that we live in, and everyone here lives in a particular kind of filter bubble, as wide as we might think we are. So there's that piece around how can you drive change, and how can you pinprick somebody's filter bubble to get them access and information to another set of facts that are more important and more true. The third is advocacy. Tons of folks have been using the internet for advocacy. They've done a really decent job of it in the realm of politics, but I think the entire nonprofit philanthropic space could do so much more in using this space. And the fourth is, what does this data tell us? What else can we build and make off of it? Slide, please. So this is a cult propaganda slide, but it's an important one to think about when you think about online data. And I just see a note about ethics popping up here. So it's really important when you have access to so much data to think about how you would be compliant. What are the rules you would follow? What is the rule of law? What is the spirit of law? And what do you live up to as an organization that then works in this space? And how you build things there. So that's an important part that everyone should take away from this conversation is, should you choose to use social media, there are many wonderful things you can do with it, but it's really important to manage privacy and other concerns in a systemic way. Slide, please, Tyler. Okay, so we're going to walk through, slide, please. We're going to walk through a few cases of work. Slide, please. The first one, this is one of our first few pieces of work. Other people may have seen this mentioned in a few other forums. And here the piece of work is in India. We looked at 23 districts, and we essentially moved teenage boys between the ages of 15 and 19 from not being interested in condoms to being interested in condoms to buying condoms and driving condom sales up over a period of 9 months. And that was fantastic because we've now started doing work for the condom company, if you will, in addition to the philanthropies that have backed this piece of work. And all we did here was we overtook the filter bubble of these boys. We set up several Facebook pages. We seeded them with educational content, interspersed with interesting content. So it didn't feel like there was somebody preaching to the boys about using contraception, but just made it seem like the most natural thing to do is, yes, I'm going to have sex, I'm going to go get a condom, and that's the right thing to do. So this is one of our behavior change projects in India. Slide, please. This is a piece of research which is done during the time of COVID. As many of you, if not all of you on this call know, that violence against women and girls accelerated during COVID-19 and accelerated across the world. This was done in Southeast Asia across multiple countries, and we were doing this piece of work for the UN Women Organization. And here, what we did was we looked at how people searched and linked it up to what services were available in those geographies. So each set of information was clustered to a latitude, longitude, and then you could assess what was in need and the need gap in that latitude, longitude from a physical perspective. And then services were mobilized on the ground to address that gap and that need as it stood. Slide, please. Moving from gender to climate, this is a really fun piece of work we did only in the UK. And in the UK, what we looked at, I do see questions popping in, and I will address them at the end. So Gunther, thank you for that. How do we make climate change part of the political discourse? What's fascinating and troubling to me is climate change is polarized on a political spectrum. And all our data actually shows that is not true. There is some magnification that happens in the political spectrum. But climate change is not a right or a left issue at scale. At scale, the only thing that matters is if someone has experienced climate change. So you could be the farmer in the middle of Iowa, and you may vote right and have voted right for 40 years. But if you see bees disappearing, you believe in climate being a challenge. And if you're in a mining town in the UK and you voted for Brexit and were far right on that, but you saw flooding happening, you believed in climate change. And that was one of the most important pieces of information that came out of this. It was a largest scale piece of work we did. We looked at 10 years of data across these 20 cities and pull that together. There is a global study we have on this. And for anybody who wants access to climate deniers as a database and climate searchers as a database, we have 4,000 cities mapped across the world. Happy to share a couple of those on a pro bono basis to just help with the information that and the knowledge that people have in this space. Next slide, please. Similar to climate is the anti-vax movement. We've studied the anti-vax movement in detail well before COVID. And the anti-vax movement, and some of you may be anti-vaxxers, and if you are, you'll understand this very well. The anti-vax movement is a lot like the Star Wars Rebel Army. I'm a Star Wars fan. The Star Wars Rebel Army believed, right, and rightfully so in this case, that the Empire was out to get them, and they were the only hope, if you will. And so when you talk down to the anti-vaxxers, yes, there are some people who are uninformed, but a large percentage of the anti-vax community actually is more organic oriented, more immunity based. They had discovered turmeric before you and I discovered turmeric during COVID-19. And so I think here the fascinating part we found was, how do you drive a campaign that is multifaceted? So one of the important parts about social media is that it has the ability to be multifaceted, and taking that same message that you have and you've sprayed on TV and just spamming people on Facebook isn't going to get your message across, and behavior change won't happen that way. So you have to develop and create multiple pieces of information. Next slide, please. Similarly with gender-based violence, here what we saw was slightly different from the previous piece of work that I mentioned. This is tied just to Singapore, and what we've built here, and again, this is a public good. If anybody wants this piece of information, how we've coded the algorithm, please do reach out to me, and we will gladly share it pro bono. In this particular piece of work, there's an analysis done to build a dictionary of what is misogyny. And so we launched this about a month and a half ago, and misogyny means different things and has different components to it. And so you could actually take all communication that is then coming in any social, digital, online format and use our misogyny index as a sieve or a filter to analyze what percentage of the conversation is misogynistic. And the ability to do things like that come from the idea that you can actually access online data, look at large sets of data, and build models that are much more representative than a focus group or a survey of a certain size. Slide, please. Lastly, for the fathers here, I think I hope all of you are good fathers. I'm certainly trying to be one, but this is an interesting one we ran in India around fathers' roles in their children's nutrition journeys, and we used the power. This is our first beta. But since then, we've had 100 million posts. We encouraged fathers to take photographs of themselves and their plate of food when feeding their children. So you took the best of Instagram, which is food, right? And you took the best of sort of self-declaration in terms of selfies, and you merged the two, and you saw how many fathers are involved. And then we used AI to map the quality of the food and the nutritive value of that food. So how many were there greens, and there were the eggs, and there were the lentils. Was there meat, not meat, etc., and mapped it. And we found this big shift from fathers being initially reluctant to fathers posting breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then this competition almost arose where like which father was a better father at giving less sugar, and so we ran it like a competition. It was fantastic. So we had a lot of fun with that. I believe this is my last slide. I do want to take over the screen, Tyler, as discussed, and share a really cool, fun tool we're playing with and that we'd like to offer up to the philanthropy community. So Tyler, I'm just going to share my screen and take that over. So one of the things, for those of you who are digitally savvy, you know that there's two ways to win on the internet. One is by content, and the second is by ads. And all of us have pushed content in some shape or form, but it's tough to build content. And we realized that was the biggest the biggest gap in getting your message out. Because when you post organic content, only 2% of your followers see that content. So the only other option is to run an ad, and ads become expensive very quickly. We all have limited budgets in some shape or form. So we built this tool for ourselves internally to generate content when we ran campaigns. And we're launching this on the 4th of October in an alpha version. And we're happy to again share access to this in some shape or form. So I'm going to just make up, let's call the brand, anybody in chat? Let's make a climate brand. If I don't hear back soon, I'm going to call it Erin, or just to make fun, Erin Tyler. How about that? No offense, Erin or Tyler. So Erin Tyler is a sustainable, I'm making this up, clothes manufacturer. Erin Tyler is launching a new pair of sneakers made out of recycled plastic. I'm giving you very little information. Erin Tyler customers are climate warriors. And then let's pick a vibe. So the vibe could be, anybody? What vibe do you want to pick for the Erin Tyler brand?
Bold.
Inventive.
Inventive. All right. Inventive it is. And then let's hit create ads. And what's going to happen now is the machine has very little information, so it might choke. Live demos are always a problem. But it's going to start making copy based on a language model that we've designed. So the most innovative sneaker, eco fashion, reusable shoes, do something good, and you can keep creating it. It's sort of, it'll keep cascading down. But as that's building out, you go to saved content and you can do a couple of things with it. The most innovative sneaker ever made. I'm automatically finding content on the internet that has rights issued to us already tagged against it. In the interest of time, let's just do that. We save it. And now I have a creative, if you will, right? And I hit publish here. And voila, I can publish on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. I can also run an ad campaign. I can download it and set it up into a scheduler. So if you use a Buffer or a Hootsuite or something, you can use this to drive it. And the reason we built this was simply so that you could turbocharge content and create multiple pieces of content for different segments, so you could reach out and communicate with them the way you would like to communicate with them, instead of taking one creative, which would take 6 weeks to make with a creative agency. Those are good people, but that's the reason we built this tool. And with that, I'm done with my time. I'm extremely excited to pass the baton to Sneha. Erin, Bolade, thank you for the precursor to my time, and Tyler, thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, Anurag. So finally, last but not least, our final speaker is Sneha Chaturvedi. Sneha is a content team lead at Girl Effect India. Over to you, Sneha.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And I'm really excited to get this opportunity to share. Slide, Tyler. Girl Effect creates content that helps adolescent girls make choices and changes in their lives. We work to ignite their confidence at a time when we know they're making decisions around that define their future. So how can they act differently? How can they make choices that allow them to be more in control of her body, her health, her learning, her livelihood? In essence, we build media that girls want, trust, and need. This could range from chatbots to chat shows, TV dramas, technology, but we talk to girls directly. We're creating safe spaces where we could share facts with them, answer questions that they might have about health, nutrition, education. Essentially, all the billions of dollars that are spent on creating services for girls in low and middle income countries, which often don't get used even when they're free, because girls don't see them as something that is meant for them. We're hoping to use the power of media to inspire girls to take up those services. Next slide. Now, what we recognize is that we're asking girls to be incredibly brave and take on social norms often. And these shifts take time. It takes time. So what we do is we put in upfront investment in building a relationship with our audience, in making sure we're constantly talking to her. So in essence, I think our approach then becomes slightly little less marketing campaign and a bit more about embedding ourselves in the culture that we're working with, navigating it with the girls. Our theory of change focuses on 8 psychological drivers that lead to decision making, and this stretches across motivation, ability, and crucially identity. We're working with adolescent girls. Am I cool? What do my peers think about me? What kind of girl do I want to be? Is fairly top of mind. So identity becomes a really important part of what we do, which in programming translates into us programming very carefully with the kind of role models and modeling techniques we use. There's also lots of time spent on formative research, on making sure we're using small pilots. There's lots of post-eval that's being done to make sure that we're being iterative, learning as we go around. Access changes so often. Social media changes so often, the environment in which the youth lives, their lingo changes so often. So how do we stay up to date and learning with them is the approach. Slide. Today, I want to talk to you about our brand in India. I'm really excited to share about it. We launched Chaja in India about 2 years ago. Chaja, loosely translated, is go forth and shine, or it could be go forth and slay it, smash it, go forth and win. All of those apply. Why I'm really excited to talk about it is because it's one of our brands in the Girl Effect portfolio that almost entirely lives on social media. So in India, we live on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. Basically, we are where we know girls who are from more economically vulnerable contexts in the Hindi belt. When they're coming online for the first time with the low-end smartphone, where is it that she's likely to find herself on the internet is where we're positioned. Next slide, please. Our target in India is older adolescents. These are girls who are at a transitional age. They're actively making decisions, particularly about their body and their relationships. They're falling in love, they're getting into relationships. They're also navigating aspirations and dreams. It's a really formative time in their lives. These are girls who have frequent and now growing access to the internet. Over the last 2 years, our content has reached 10.3 million girls across Facebook and Instagram. I think someone's video mic is on. All right. 21 million views have, we've clocked in 21 million views of our content. The program in India currently is more focused around SRH outcomes, around increasing service access to clinics and other services for adolescent girls, and also increasing uptake of contraception. But along with that, there's also lots of messaging that is around taking on the more everyday norms and challenges that might be holding her back. Next slide, please. So before I tell you what Chaja looks like in for girls, I wanted to frame the kind of behaviors that we're seeing with girls in SRH. When I discovered I was pregnant, I told my boyfriend. He bought pills from a chemist for me to have an abortion. We did not go to a doctor since he told my family. I don't go to the doctor because I don't know what to say. And anyway, unmarried girls shouldn't go to a lady doctor anyway. It's better to look online or just check with your boyfriend. He is 28 years old, so he knows how these things work. He said he has needs and that sex after 9 months of dating is common. He took me to a hotel room. It hurt a lot and I bled for 4 days after. One of the early things we recognized was that we weren't just going to be talking to her about her SRH needs, but she was in a relationship where we needed to help her navigate more than just the moment of sex. She might have been with a partner who's also dictating whether or not, she shares her social passwords with him, whether she's allowed to wear jeans, how much time she spends with her best friends. You can't ask girls to make confident SRH decisions around contraception negotiation if we're not helping her build up that confidence across other facets of her relationship. And so, slide please. We built an ecosystem of products for her that in effect show up in her life at 2 types of consumption moments. So either this could be broadcast content that she's consuming, she could be swiping through her phone and she might find some of our content. And this is short form content that we make. We recognize that our audience definitely, looks at internet data and mobile data as very precious currency. So I can't take up all of her time. So it's short form content that could range from 5 reasons why a condom is your best friend to short form fiction, which is about relationships. It's about everyday dilemmas in your friendship. It's about defining what kind of girl do you want to be. So that is the more broadcast part of our content where we're showing up on her screen. The second part, the second lens with which we look at this is there are moments when she is quieter, when she is seeking us out. And for those moments, we've built another roster of products, one of which is a chatbot. This chatbot is called Bolade, which says, just say it, sister. But this is a chatbot that has a lot of questions, which range from, does he love me, to what is an STI? So a range of conversations. More recently, when the vaccine rollout for COVID happened in India for an 18+ audience, we also, we considered whether we wanted to show up amongst the din that was more widely out there around vaccine information, which through some interviews we'd heard from girls who were finding it a bit overwhelming. We chose instead to put it in our chatbot and let her know that, this content is there in case she's interested, so that she can be having that conversation with us at a private, more self-paced time. We also have a Facebook-only girls community called Bug Gang. One of the things we realized about our audience was that girls aren't talking to each other a lot. And this got, of course, so much worse with COVID. But creating a community online where she was making sense of what other girls like her were saying, it was a safe space where she could talk more freely. Another thing that we do, and I know some people have referred to this in the past about having an active engagement stuff. But what we do is we have an in-house moderator. Very often, because of the content that we're posting, we will get messages saying, hi, Didi, which is hi, elder sister. And it could be a relationship doubt, it could be an SRH doubt. And this allows us to make sense of where is she on her journey and either send her to the next service, send her to the next piece of content, or send her to the girls' community if it's needed. In addition, we've created a website where we have vetted and aggregated services and clinics that we think will be useful for her. And very often, this website becomes the last endpoint that we sort of signpost her to. The next slide, please. Now, what we've done is we've created multiple touch points. So I've laid out all our products from on the spectrum of broadcast to interactive. And this allows us different ways in which we can nudge her to services. So this could be CTAs at the end of a piece of content, or it could be, more focused campaigns with service providers that we might have tied up with. So I want you to picture a cool role model that girls look up to. Bring in the sense of, I don't know, makeup swatches or a cell phone unpacking video, but only you've got a young girl talking about the school service where she didn't probably feel judged. From AMAs to campaigns on Bug Gang. But as you move from left to right, what becomes available to us is, because it's more interactive, we can customize and send her exactly where she needs to go. I don't need to send her, if she's already come on chat and told us what she's worried about, I can help her navigate whether it's a helpline she needs to go to, or whether it's a piece of content that she can look at, or if it's a particular kind of service that we can send her to. So it allows us to customize and engage with her in that manner. Slide. Finally, I'm just going to share learnings. The internet is not equal. And one of the things we've learned is that it makes sense to invest money in reaching the right audience. I know, Erin, you spoke about how when you guys put content out there, it was so much more boys than girls. And one of the things we've done is we've used marketing and targeting on these social apps in a very particular way, so that we've been able to create a space which is, well, in some ways fenced around adolescent girls, and it sort of has helped us build a safe space for them. A content plus conversations model has worked incredibly well for us. Our interactive products end up playing a really interesting complementary role to all the broadcast content that we make. I know, Erin, you mentioned this as well, and I want to second that. Different social media platforms definitely have unique roles. So if YouTube or Facebook feels like a place where she's just more passively consuming, versus Instagram is a place where girls are looking at engaging or at actually even participating on Instagram, as Anurag mentioned. I know the temptation sometimes is to just, resize content and for different platform needs and put it out there, but there's so much more merit in customizing for different platforms, and how your audience relates to different platforms will be different, but there's merit in doing that. Another thing at the core of what we do is digital safeguarding. So last year with lockdown, lots of girls weren't able to access doctors, weren't able to go for services. So we had a tie-up with a telemedicine service provider. But along with that, we made content which helped girls understand, how do you identify services which are safe online? How do you navigate, privacy, or how do you navigate security? Where do you set up passwords? Do you give your address? Do you give your phone number? But how do you help her navigate an entirely new ecosystem that you might be introducing her to? I'm not best placed to talk about evidence, but I do want to say that a hybrid approach of digital and offline for us has worked really well. I think what digital does is it allows you, along with self-reported survey data that you might be collecting, there's so many observed data points. This could be from access to click-throughs to the number of reactions, but observed data is oftentimes so powerful to work in conjunction with the self-reported survey data that you might be collecting. Okay, I don't want to take up too much time. Thank you, everyone. Tyler, back to you.
Thank you, Sneha. Let me just stop sharing there. So we will move on to the question and answer period. We've had a lot of questions, so let's hope that we can get to most of them. Let's see. So just getting the other presenters back on. We've had a lot of questions, maybe to start, we've had a lot of questions about the use of influencers. So would anyone like to talk about how your campaigns have potentially included influencers?
I'm happy to start. So Merci Monero has worked with influencers, mostly, as I mentioned, in Togo. Those collaborations have, I would say, helped us get our message out. It's helped because of the nature of the work of some of the influencers. I think it also helped us reach new audience. As I mentioned, we worked with a comedian who has a totally different tack on and a different approach, and is very different from the more reproductive health and family planning focused content that we would normally put on our page. So that helped us reach new audiences. But he also recorded videos that have some wonderful messages around gender equity and gender-based violence, and being there for young people from a very young age to help advocate for gender equity, for example. And so I think that allowed a really interesting tone and voice and access to new audiences that perhaps otherwise we wouldn't have reached. Otherwise, working with the radio and TV hosts, our consultant who works in Togo and helps co-design, co-coordinate the campaign, he was able to appear on these TV shows as well to address some of the themes that we look at through Merci Monero, but also inviting additional experts. So we're not the only voice there. And then we already have the draw. For example, one of the, sorry, I've got the French words flying through my head. One of the hosts of the TV shows, she has a huge following and is already seen as a big resource for relationship advice, et cetera. And so to have her voice being lent to the campaign, I think also was very helpful for us and gave us, again, new platforms to reach out and get the campaign's content out there, while also finding different ways to meet young people where they are, offline as well, and through other channels. The last thing I'll add here is that we also recently held a song and poetry contest, and we worked with one of the influencers to help promote and get the word out about that. song and poetry contest. And by far, we had the most entries from that country where we did work with influencers compared to other countries where we didn't. So I think there are many advantages of working with influencers.
Thanks, Erin. Would anyone else like to briefly touch on the use of influencers?
If I may, I wanted to say Erin had the perfect example. It was even obvious in our slides, but it also helps to get your message, your content out more organically than paid adverts, because people already trust these voices. They are already interested in what they have to say, and sometimes they help to socialize those behaviors that we're trying to change. So if somebody is advocating for something and this is an influencer to the person you're trying to change their behavior, you've moved them from one level to another already. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to practice that behavior, but it helps to push them further in the spectrum of behavior change.
Thanks, Bolade. Let's go way back. One of the very first questions from Gunter was asking about how we can foster dialogues and avoid these one-way communication channels that oftentimes we find on social media. Would anyone like to speak on that?
Sneha, I think you're probably the best qualified here to address that.
I mean, we actually planned for those two-way interactions. So it could be done in so many ways. It could be like some of the challenges that people will tell you with online is that, you can have like questions at the end of the content. You can have tell me more. You can have tag a friend, share your story, ask me anything sessions with experts. But that, like, I think what social media does is that it's really individual as a media channel. So it's very one-on-one, and allowing for conversation and engagement is powerful. And really depending on the platform and what it allows you to do, like, especially if you look at what's happening across channels, Facebook used to function a certain way. More recently, Instagram has said, I'm going to be more video first. There's a certain kind of engagement that's happening around Reels. YouTube has opened up a community space in the last few years where, that is happening. Live interactions with fans are going up. I think even broadcast channels like YouTube are incorporating conversations and encouraging you to use interaction.
Thank you, Sneha. I see a question that was just asked in the chat, and I think it's such an interesting question. I'm going to insert it right here. Carolyn is interested in learning what not to do in a social media campaign. So has there been anything that you've done that hasn't had the anticipated impact? This is for anyone.
Well, I think that's a different question. So I mean, we failed multiple times, and I think that's really true of my co-presenters too. So I think, but I'm separating that from the question, which is what not to do. And I think for those of us who grew up, old people like me, in a comms one-way centric world, which didn't need you to be fully authentic, social media is extremely challenging. I think social media, you have to be nimble. I think Sneha made the point, and you have to be authentic. Even if you're using influencers, they have to be aligned to who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And I think the biggest struggle is people just being authentic and easy and informed on it. I think that's the main thing. Don't think of it as you teaching. Think of it as you engaging.
Anyone else?
I'd like to add to that. Yeah. So social media is very fast, and things could go south really quickly. And I mentioned in my presentation that crisis management should be one of your essential strategies. It should be an essential component in your strategy. So sometimes even setting up a social media campaign you might not be the one that will be directly involved in the daily postings and the engagement online. So if you do have certain reactions online, you should have a mechanism in place for people to respond to that and also defer to authority internally so that you are presenting a joint response. This case in point is not trying to, because you will get some backlash that you wouldn't like. You will get some comments that you feel, why should somebody say something so bad in quotes? But these are people expressing their opinion. So
Bolade, I think we lost you. That's too bad too, because it sounded like he was in the middle of a great point, but maybe we'll be able to come back to it.
One of the ways we've looked at, I mean, I'll respond to both things. One, Anurag, picking up exactly from you about influencers. I remember we did a lot of like.
one of the things not to do is.
No, you're back. You're back. You should finish your point.
Oh, sorry, Bolade, you're muted.
Oh, I got cut off at some point. Oh, apologies. So I'm just going to summarize. What not to do is not to have a crisis management component in your strategy before deploying on social media. It's a huge mistake. You need to have that thought out because you're going to meet different kind of people with different opinions that are not supportive of whatever it is you're putting out there. So you need to be ready for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bolade. I think that's a great point, and I think that can really relate to several of the questions that were asked around how do we scale, how do we direct the response, how do we prepare for that, and thinking through those questions is very important, and having a plan in place for that. Sneha, would you like to finish your point that you were starting?
Yeah. Let me continue with the point that you're on right now. I think for us, what we've done at GERC is we actually spend time marketing to the right audience. So we know we're landing in front of the right desk, but often, and this is a conversation we have with our moderators all the time, like, are we looking at a dissenting opinion or are we looking at a troller? And I think calling out trolling for what it is should be a reality, and we should empower our moderators. I mean, we have human moderators, we're not depending on bots for it, and sometimes it can get harsh. So preparing your moderators or empowering them at XYZ are situations where you should feel empowered to block a comment or cancel something, because what you're also doing at that point is making sure that the rest of the comments and everybody else that's engaging feels safe. So there is an active role that you must play in creating a safer internet in some way, because I mean, yes, just like backlash is one thing, but there's also trolling, and it's important to recognize that that does happen.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Sneha. I see we had several questions. I want to make sure we at least touch on it about evaluation, how we evaluate online and offline content, and the effect of our SBCC interventions. Would anyone like to speak on this?
Yeah, I can take the sort of less informed lead. So from an M&E perspective, I think conventional M&E always has been pre and a post, a control group, and that. And I think that's very, very executable, as my co-hosts will vouch from a digital perspective. I think the fun part about online M&E is that you can actually do it at much more rapid intervals. You can test many, many more interventions. So there are many hypotheses that can be tested. A lot of hypotheses don't get tested in the offline environment because of budget, scale, what you end up going with. A lot of decisions are made by people like us on the call saying, actually, in my experience, I don't think that should be done. And that's a little flawed. I think that should be left to the beneficiaries whom we're trying to address. So the same models are certainly feasible to deploy from an M&E perspective. But Erin, Sneha, Bolade, please please do feel free to add to that.
Sure. Yes, I can speak a little bit about that. So during my presentation, I referenced that we did an exposure study, which allowed us a little bit of insight into which channels are the most successful at reaching our intended audiences, and also looking at what kind of impact we're having among those who are saying that they recall the campaign and have been reached by the campaign. Another methodology that we used for the campaign, and that report is still forthcoming, working with, again, the Breakthrough Research Project, we used a most significant change methodology to get a sense of, after having interacted with the campaign, just more open line of questioning, what changes have you made, or what was the most significant impact? And then also trying to get a sense of, again, at what level that interaction was. And we were finding, at least through that methodology, many of the stories that we were getting back were about having interacted with the campaign through our community events. And those stories were really, some of them really quite moving and really quite touching, from parents saying that they were inspired after attending a campaign event and a campaign discussion to start talking with their children about reproductive health, about family planning, and inspiring others within their church to do the same thing. Another man said that he used to take quite a severe and physical approach to disciplining his daughter. And after interacting with the campaign and attending an event with her, that he's taken a completely different approach, has changed the way in which he interacts with her, and has done so in a much more empathetic and hands-off, literally way, which is really encouraging. So we find, I think, different levels of influence, and also are able to get a smaller sense of really what's possible through different methodologies and through different channels when doing this, that we can't necessarily expect those same community impacts to take place because of something that they saw online necessarily. But online, we have contributed, we surmise, to increased use of family planning methods, increased conversation, because we're also providing those conversation pieces and suggesting, watch this with somebody, or what is your story around this, and call out your hero, thank your hero after watching this video or another. And just another piece to touch back on social listening, I think that we also had the opportunity to not only look at how our direct campaign content was performing through certain software analyses, but also looking at, and I admit this wasn't necessarily the primary goal of the campaign, but looking at whether our campaign and certain content was having any influence and ripple effect on the larger regional conversation around first periods, first relationships, and those kinds of things, to really gauge. So I think there's different methodologies, and again, aligning those methodologies with what you want to learn and what you set out to accomplish in your campaign from the beginning is also really useful and necessary.
Thank you for that, Erin. And I'm so sorry, everyone, that we won't get to all of the questions. Next time, we'll have to have this be a 2 or 3 hour event, although I'm afraid we'd still probably not be able to get to all of the questions. So just in the last minute, maybe if we could do just a quick round of final thoughts, 20 seconds. Any last words from our guests? Bolade?
Oh, well, I just wanted to say that it's been as much a learning experience for me as much as it is a sharing experience. I really enjoy the questions. I've learned a few things, and I probably would be working on some of that with my team. Anurag, that too, once it's out of alpha testing, would like to have a piece of that as well. Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Sneha. And thanks, everyone, for a very participatory webinar. I really loved it.
Great. Erin?
I'm actually going to use this opportunity to plug another evaluation or another review that Breakthrough Action is working on right now, which is providing a set of recommendations for those who work in the youth and family planning space who are looking to leverage digital to increase the impact of their programs, and also to gauge whether or not that's the right decision for their program. So stay tuned in the next few months on Breakthrough Action, and you'll also see some familiar faces from this webinar, I hope. I see Sneha laughing, but thank you so much to all of the other presenters and to all the participants for joining today.
Thanks, Erin, and great plug. Anurag.
Thank you. I guess echoing what Erin and Bolade said, The only plug I'm going to make is use the internet. It's epic. Make some change happen. Use the internet.
And Sneha.
I mean, I don't know, guys. I spend my phone tells me I spend about on a weekend I spend about 8 to 9 hours on it. About 4 of those on Instagram. I mean, we have to start believing our own actions and where we are. So if phones have reached somewhere and the internet is there, then we need to believe that it creates change. So thank you so much for this lovely platform, everyone. It was really great, and thanks for all the questions on the side and all the comments.
Yes, a huge thank you to everyone. Just as a note, we will be sending out the slides and the recording in the next day or two, so watch out for that. And of course, a huge sincere thank you to all of our presenters today. We all feel what a busy time of year this is, the last days of September. So thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to give these excellent presentations and to have this great dialogue with the Springboard participants. So thank you to everyone, and be sure to watch out for future Springboard events. All right. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.